Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Hot Takes with your boys, Derek and Jason. I'm Jason.
And I'm Derek.
And let's get right into the hot takes.
So, for this week, we're going to be skipping from supernatural giant creatures from who knows where to magic.
Ooh,
Not
Magic
science.
the Gathering?
We're going from science to magic now, transitioning from last week's episode.
Not Magic the Gathering.
We are talking about a certain boy wizard.
I'm not a wizard. I'm just Harry.
Well,
just Harry. All right.
We are talking about
Harry Potter.
Let's end that bit before it gets bad.
Yeah, I could go on that bit for a long time.
I know you can.
Yeah, I did that to him the other night. But it's
So,
not for this podcast.
In general, how we're going to set this up here is we are going to have a discussion basically about Harry Potter films in general.
Mm-hmm. I guess we'll kind of just go through our opinions on each one.
Honestly, we could just work through each film. Now, we did talk a little bit before the show.
Yeah.
We have an idea. There will be some hot takes.
There's going to be, I have some strong opinions in some directions with some of them and in other directions with
and
other
I have
ones.
opposite opinions.
Yeah, so let's jump right into it.
Let's start with
Sorcerer's Stone.
Sorcerer's Stone.
All right, how do you feel about Sorcerer's Stone? I love Sorcerer's
So
Stone.
a little background
I think
for
it's
me.
amazing.
Before we get into Harry
peeking
Potter films, I want to state, at least for me growing up, what Harry Potter meant to me. So I never read any of the books. I did want to state that. But as a kid, I did watch mainly the first three films. I watched them a decent amount as a kid, mainly the first and second one. And I really enjoyed specifically the first two as a kid a lot. The third one was kind of hard for me to get into when I was younger. And then in high school, I came back to the films to finally finish them, rewatching all the way through to the end a couple times over now, and I've been planning on doing it again soon. Where it really hit me, where I enjoyed the later ones a lot more with the darker tone. Don't get me wrong when I say my opinion's probably on the earlier films. I still really love them. I still see a lot of the genius there. It's just I do find myself skewed to the darker setting of the later ones.
Now, did you ever read the books?
Well, like I said, I never read the books.
Never read the books. Okay, I'm
I
curious.
really want to. I honestly, when I'm older and actually a dad, and I'll try to be a cool dad. My plan, I think, might be is to get the storybook versions of those and read them to my kids every night.
Cool. Yeah.
Because then I can finally read them too, and I think that'd be cool.
I would highly recommend the audiobooks. They are
Really?
the guy that does them. I can't remember his name. Is phenomenal.
Morgan
though.
Freeman.
No, it's not Morgan. But no, it's the dude. It's the dude who plays the president of Lake Town in the Hobbit movies.
Oh,
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I know who you're talking
Yeah,
about,
that
but I
guy.
can't remember him.
Anyway, because when I was younger, I despised Harry Potter.
Really?
As a young child, it was the worst thing to me.
Now that was that parents forcing
No,
the opinion
it
on
wasn't.
you, or that
It wasn't.
was just straight your opinion?
When
Okay.
I was 3 or 4, I was at the local fair, and they were playing Chamber of Secrets, and it was the part when Hermione gets petrified.
Oh.
That terrified. I thought that was the
I did think as a kid
worst
that was
thing.
a scary film.
And
as
so
a kid.
from that moment on, I thought Harry Potter was just terrible. I was like, I hate it. But then close to 8th or 9th grade, I got the Lego Harry Potter visual dictionary because I had a bunch of random Harry Potter Lego parts from 2001, 2002.
You said 8th or 9th grade, so that would have been 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. Okay,
mm-hmm.
so the Lego sets had just retired probably.
Yeah,
a
it
couple
was
years
just
before.
at the end. It was just the tail end. They were starting to head out. It was the last wave. And so, but I had a bunch of stuff from way back. So my mom was like, well, why don't we get this book? And I was like, all right. And I looked at it, I was like, these sets are actually pretty sick. And I was like, well, why don't we watch the first movie? And I watched it, and I immediately was like, okay, I take back everything I ever said about this. This is amazing. Yeah, for me, Sorcerer's Stone is my favorite out of them.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree. I like the direction that it went with it, especially the way that 4 transitioned into the darker tones.
4, I will
Four
say,
is
I'm
probably
gonna
my
say this
second
straight up
favorite.
now. 4 is my favorite.
Yeah, I think 4
is my
four
favorite.
is up there.
No, wait. Now before we really dive into this, I feel like for us to really enjoy this, we gotta say this now. This is a spoiler talk. At this point.
Yes. If
I
you
feel
have not seen Harry Potter,
otherwise you're just gonna be like,
you
oh,
will
you know
be
that
spoiled.
part in that film, toward the end.
This is not a spoiler-free zone. I think that should be a given if it's about a specific film. We're not.
I know.
This isn't a review
but
or
I want-
something.
be-
We're telling you
because-
that you should watch these 8 movies that should have been 7 in my opinion, but that's for another time.
Yeah.
I don't like when they make the last one a two-parter. It did horribly for Mockingjay. I didn't like it for
Deathly Hallows wasn't too
It
bad.
worked better in Deathly Hallows for
if
sure.
you watch them together back to back, then it just feels like almost like a Lord of the Rings in
It
terms
does.
of like
It does.
how long it is. Yeah.
I feel like it was just a change of pace from the rest of the movies, and they tried to.
It was.
And they missed the details.
I was kind of okay.
They went for the wrong details.
I was kind of
opinion.
okay with them changing pace.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's just me. We'll get there when we get
there.
there.
If you have not seen it yet, please do.
Yeah, we've definitely already spoiled everything at this point.
Yeah.
Let's jump right into it with
Sorcerer's Stone. So we have a setting here. We have the classic setting of this orphan dropped on the doorstep of
that opening
his
scene
relatives.
is amazing.
It really is.
It's written
With
beautifully in the
music,
books, and then the film captures it so well. That is one of that's one thing I really like about the first one is it captures the magic of the books. Mm-hmm. The books have
the sound
such
design
a
is really well in these.
Oh
films.
my goodness, the sound design is amazing. And soundtrack, John Williams.
Oh, dude.
That's another reason I really like the first one is John Williams' soundtrack set the pace for the whole franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that. But
which ones did he do?
He did the first three.
Okay, I thought it was the first two. Okay.
Yeah, first three.
I see.
Yeah,
I can understand that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So
just Sorcerer's Stone. Yeah,
Sorcerer's
really good.
Stone. I mean, like everything in that movie was from scratch. The look of it, the costumes, the sounds, the pacing, the characters. Like, I mean, you had the books for inspiration, but most of that stuff is all developed in that movie, in the world building that they do, starting from our world, starting with they're like, they kind of tease the magical world at the beginning with Dumbledore and Hagrid on the flying thing and McGonagall.
Yeah.
And so you kind of tease that, but then you kind of walk with Harry as he's introduced to this world. I mean, it's the same as the way the book does it.
Yeah.
But I love that. It's such a great way to introduce this whole world in a way that's believable and exciting, and it makes you want to be a part of it. It just captures a special feeling that clearly a lot of people felt because of the success of this franchise. But
yeah, it could have very much been easily destroyed. Like, even though I have not read the books, I know that they could have easily screwed it up. Mm-hmm. But they did a really good job of holding true to the books. From how it sounds.
Yeah. So that's the reason I love the first one. I mean, the actors, Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson, they carry the movie. It's so impressive.
Kid actors.
I mean, yeah,
it's really amazing. Also, the other cool part is also the director they chose for this, Chris Columbus.
Yeah,
because he's also the guy who did the first two Harry Potters,
right?
But he also did the first two Home Alones as well.
Oh yeah.
And
John Williams did the soundtrack for
I was
going
to say, you can see a lot of similarities in that because I had watched the first couple of Harry Potters last semester more recently, and then over Christmas I watched Home Alone, and I was seeing some of just the shot work of the house and hearing the music, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm watching Harry Potter right now.
Yeah. So first one, I love it. Did you want to say anything else about the first one? I think we're gonna jump to the second one unless you got.
Well, I was just gonna bring. I feel like we need to bring up at least two things. One is how they introduced Harry himself into the wizarding world. Mm-hmm. So I want to bring up basically one big pro and one big con of that movie, at least for me, in a con. I really love the movie, and it doesn't bring it down a whole lot, but I do feel like because it stayed as true to the book as it did, it drags on a decent amount. It feels really long.
Yeah, I do agree. It is pretty long, but as far as staying true to the book, I think they nailed which details to keep and which ones to leave out.
I love the first hour of that movie. Mm-hmm. It is absolute perfection in how they handled that.
Oh yeah,
with the setup of him getting the letter from Hogwarts and introducing Hagrid and building up this whole idea that you're famous around here because you survived. You're the only person to have survived an encounter with, who shall not be named. It's really, it sets him up in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
And I think one thing, going back to kind of our Luke conversation, because I feel like I'm going to stem to that a lot probably with character development, where I feel like Luke is doing more things that he's kind of just along for the ride. I feel like Harry, he is a lot more different in that. And also, it's, again, Daniel Radcliffe did a great job as a kid actor for the films. But he is not just a passive bystander. He's actually, doing things. He actually, you can see that he truly cares a lot. Well, I think a good example is for one the snake when he just is calmly talking to the snake and he's like identifying like how he feels the same way as him,
Right.
and I think that's well. And also at the same time, like when later in the film when Neville gets his Memorial stolen by Draco, and Harry Potter is like determined to
Yeah.
like set things straight.
Yeah, they do really good characterization with the situations they put him in and how he handles it.
He's really good. Also, Ron's just a good side character.
Oh, yeah.
In general,
Yeah.
I like every 5 seconds he's screaming or about to cry. It's great.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think they handled it well, especially also like Ron in her opinion of Hermione, in his opinion of Hermione,
Oh, yeah.
because of like how he's just continuously like putting her down for being a book nerd.
Right. But then the turn with the troll. Like that whole they did that really well.
Again, the character development, they did such a great job.
those characters are so well defined. I mean,
Neville,
even like
Neville.
Albus Dumbledore, Neville Longbottom.
Which Dumbledore
Professor
do you
McGonagall.
prefer?
I'm a sucker for Richard Harris just because.
Now that was the first one,
That was the
right?
first
okay,
one,
I
yeah.
thought that was the first one.
Yeah, just because I love Sorcerer's Stone, but they both. It bums me out that they had to change halfway through, but both of them fit the
Both of
tone
them
of
are
the
pretty
films.
yeah,
they're
yeah,
in.
yeah.
That's the thing. There's a big tonal shift later, which is why it makes
Which
sense.
wasn't there a year gap in between Chamber and Prisoner, of when the films came out? Like Chamber came out in 2002, and I think Prisoner came in 2004.
I think that's correct.
And like in that gap, you can kind of see like the difference, in those films in general. Like they seem like because Chris Columbus is no longer the director. They got someone else in. I forget who they got in.
Yeah.
For the third one,
trying
but you
to
can tell like it just everything seems a bit duller, a bit darker, a bit
Mm-hmm.
older, a bit grimier.
Yeah. Well, we'll get there
We'll
in
get
a second,
there.
but first
So
let's
now,
hit
to the second
Chamber
part,
of
essentially,
Secrets.
of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
early films. We have Chamber.
Yeah.
So Chamber, I think it is definitely very derivative of the first one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I enjoy Chamber a lot, but it actually, I think Chamber, if I'm right, is the actual longest running one. Like I think it actually almost cracks 3 hours.
I know the extended version does.
I'm not for sure. I
The
might
extended
be wrong.
version only adds like 15
I
minutes.
might
though.
be wrong, but I think
Yeah,
that might
it's
be
pretty
the,
long. It's like
It's the longest one.
it's like 174 minutes.
Yeah, somewhere around there. It's a pretty.
174.
Which I
think.
understand why. They're again like the first one. They're doing a lot of setup, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for me, I definitely feel the dragging in Chamber more than the first one because it
You
feels
mean
like they're just
basilisk.
well, no, the
Oh, I
dragging
thought you said
on.
dragon.
No,
Oh, I
not the
thought you were
dragon.
talking about like
No,
the
I
creature.
love the basilisk, but no,
Basilisk.
the progression of
Yeah,
the
the
movie,
dragon. Okay, sorry.
The-
I thought
yeah,
you said
I do
dragon.
the
not
dragging.
Yeah, sorry.
The way
I'm tired.
that it because it feels like the first one kind of needs to be long because it's setting up this whole world, and then it feels like the second one's trying to just redo all of that.
Yeah,
for me.
it's using a lot.
I do love the flying carpet. That part's fun.
Yeah, the beginning
then-
of the film is pretty good. I
But
still
then
think,
after that, it starts to. I mean, it's just kind of more of them going to school, them trying to investigate some hidden thing, and then I do like the end bit too with the basilisk and all that. But it definitely.
I think the best parts of
feels
those movies is
like-
definitely Tom Riddle
Yeah. Tom Riddle's great.
and Dobby.
Yes, Dobby. Yeah, I really like the beginning, but as it goes on, it just feels more and more like it's just like Sorcerer's Stone with a twist, and I don't really like that because like the soundtrack is. I don't think that there's a new song in the second film. I think it's just
I can see your point
the
there, but
same
even
thing,
still,
which it
the
doesn't need
music
to be
was-
completely
yeah.
original, but I mean
Yeah.
like there was maybe one or two new tracks. It just like
Well, I'm
it
wondering-
made each scene
I'm
feel
wondering
like I was
how
it looked like I
closely-
was looking at reshot scenes.
Yeah, but I'm
And
wondering
so-
how closely they filmed the first and second one together.
They were
though.
pretty close together too. I imagine.
I think they're back to back years and when they came out. So I'm just wondering if
So-
they just like if
that
wondering
might have
if
had something to
John
do with
Williams just he didn't have the time to.
Yeah,
really do
I mean
that.
it's not a terrible thing. I still think it's a great movie, but it doesn't
think,
hold up
yeah,
because
I
of that
think we have to
reason.
get some across.
That's why I like
well,
the first
maybe
one so
maybe
much
you
more.
don't have this opinion, but I don't think any of the Harry Potter films are trash.
No, they're all well.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
But-
I wouldn't say that they're not all.
Chamber's
stellar,
not
in my
bad,
opinion,
but Sorcerer is much better than Chamber.
Yeah.
I will say that the pacing's better, and in general, the setup for Harry Potter and Sorcerer is better. But still, it's really good in Chamber. Now, this is where things get slightly divisive. Is we move into Prisoner.
Yeah.
Now, I will state that's not my favorite.
I I am not a fan of Prisoner of Azkaban. I love it's probably my favorite book, and it's my least favorite movie. So there's just, I don't like how much of a tonal shift there is. I know that that's going to come with a new director, but I don't like the tonal shift. I don't like the pacing.
But you don't have a problem with like the later films as much as Prisoner.
No. Prisoner. So
why do you specifically like? Because when you brought it up to me earlier, I was very like curious to know why.
Okay. One thing I remember specifically not liking. My sister doesn't like this too. As I mentioned, she's likes production design, costume design, set design stuff. They just like all of a sudden they're constantly wearing Muggle clothes at all times. Granted, they probably were doing that in the earlier in the setting of the earlier films. They were just between classes every time, and now they're not between classes every time. But it was abrupt. I didn't like that. I don't like the pacing.
That's kind of like here at college, you know, like the teachers get it more chilled as what the students do as well, you know.
Yeah. It's just it's just sheer transition. Some of the art direction with like the Dementors, I think the Dementors look good, but like some of the soul sucking bits, the Patronuses are weak.
Really?
I mean, they just seem kind of divergent to the point where it's trying to do something different. I don't know. I didn't like that art direction. That's another qualm I have with later films, is that the apparating's a little wonky because they're just flying around, and that's like weird. But if you haven't read the books, it's not as big of a deal.
Yeah, I was gonna
say. So that's one thing, is I do have qualms because of the book, but objectively, I don't like the film regardless of the book.
Like you think objectively it's not that great of a film?
I think objectively it's a fine film. It doesn't play to my tastes. I don't like certain aspects of it. Like the Shrieking Shack part, like that's like the huge climax of the story. That's like the most important part, when they're confronting Lupin and Peter Pettigrew, and they're having that whole conversation with Sirius Black.
And Snape comes in.
And it's just that part just doesn't feel exciting. It's just kind of bland. They're just kind of standing there in this swaying house having a weird conversation.
I will say,
instead of having like this really intense confrontation, they're just kind of like Expelliarmus every 5 seconds, and somebody drops a wand. It's just like, really? That's the best you can do for the most important part of the story?
I can see if you take the film on its own, it's not maybe as great as others. And like I said, it's not my favorite. Yeah. I love it a lot more than I think you do. But I don't think it's, it's not my favorite from the franchise. Mm-hmm. But I can, at least seeing it in the bigger picture of Harry Potter, binge watching, I don't have a huge problem with it. Yeah. I just take it as kind of like a slower one.
Another problem I have with it is, more so than any of the other ones,
but what about like Buckbeak or
I
Sirius?
Do not like the Buckbeak scene where he's flying around on it for 3 minutes. It is a complete waste of screen time. It doesn't need to be there. It's not exciting. I'm not like, oh, I'm flying with Buckbeak. I'm like, look at this CGI scenery. It's okay for the time period.
Cool. I thought it looked
I don't know. I think it's just boring. There's no story. Like, it doesn't advance the story at all. I guess you're building up that Harry has a relationship with Buckbeak now, but it's more so in the fact that Harry shows respect.
I thought it was more cool just because I feel like Harry had already gone through a decent amount of trials, and I think it was a moment that I felt like Harry...
a triumphant moment?
It was like a moment that Harry could truly be happy.
Yeah.
Outside of just Ron and Hermione. Like, he could I don't know. He just seemed truly filled with, like, joy.
I know. I get that. It's just...
Like, when he, like,
weird,
screams
it's like in the
across
middle
the
of
water.
It's in the middle of this one scene that's trying to establish Buckbeak for later. Like, it's a scene... It's a plot point scene. The scene is like integral to the plot.
Yeah.
And then there's just this random 3-minute segment that has absolutely no bearing on the plot. That's all about the character.
Well, how do you feel about Sirius?
I like Sirius as a character. Sirius is great.
Gary Oldman, I think.
Gary Oldman's amazing.
Gary Oldman's great at anything he does.
He is. He is a phenomenal actor. Yeah. I like Sirius Black. I feel like that's another thing that I don't really like, is it feels like he's... I don't think this is Gary Oldman's fault, but it feels like he's acting crazy for the sake of acting crazy a little bit too much. I do get that he was in Azkaban for a while, so he is going to be loopy and a little wild.
I think that was what they were going for. It's just
like weird, because some parts he's like really serious and lucid and he makes sense, and there's other parts where he's just like like in the Shrieking Shack he's like crazy and he doesn't make any sense just for the sake of adding confusion, and then all of a sudden later he's completely fine and
Well, I
talking
think
to
part of
Harry
why he
normally.
seemed like a bit nuts. Again, he got out of know
Right.
Azkaban recently, but also at the same time, they finally found Peter Pettigrew.
Yeah.
Like it was him confronting him after all these years.
Mhm. That I mean, yeah, I do get that.
I think
It's
it was
just, there's
Not
and
as
that's
much
before,
crazy there, and I think it's
yeah.
more anger.
Well, it just comes across as
It does come across
as
that
a little
way.
bit
But I-
bit much because it ends up just adding conflict that seems unnecessary to the story.
Well, what about the time travel aspect?
That's the reason that it's my favorite book, honestly, is because I really like the consistency in that version of time travel. I like that, like, it works
You don't
really
like
well.
it in the movie?
in the I like it in the movie. I think it's shown well. It's just not like a point where I'm like, they did that really well. Like, it's not a credit to the movie. I can't really credit the movie and say, oh, they did a really good job like showing that. Although I will say I do really like the transition where at the beginning of the scene, Dumbledore's talking to them and walks out the door. And then at the end of that whole segment, Dumbledore walks past them and nods at them and they see themselves disappear. I do really like that part.
That was good.
That part's really
He's
good.
like, what are you talking about? Goodbye.
Yeah. So
that was done pretty well.
that I do love that part. But
I think the things
That's
that bother
specific,
you
but-
probably just don't bother me quite as
Yeah.
much. And again, we're taking two different perspectives on this franchise. We've both watched all the films, but you've read all the books. I would
which does affect my opinion.
And I have never read the books.
But yeah, that's just because it's just a complete tonal change from the last one for no apparent reason other than the fact that the director wanted to, which I don't think that I didn't like that. I mean, I do think that they improved the layout of Hogwarts, but they did starkly change it. It was not as flat anymore. Hagrid's hut is in a very different location.
I was okay with it being in a different location.
I mean, I think it works better there. I like that. I like the design better. It's a little jarring with all of the changes happening all of a sudden, and you just need to either go along with it or
I guess
not.
it doesn't bother me as much. I'm focusing
that
more
stuff
on the
bothers
character
me.
development and the story.
Yeah.
And so
I don't really like. I don't know. I don't really like the characters as much in that one either. But
what about when Hermione punches Draco?
that part, I do like that part. That part's pretty good. But I mean, like, I don't know. It's just not definitely not my favorite.
I understand.
I don't really enjoy watching that movie because there's just for everything that it does right, it does something that I don't like. For everything that I like, there's another thing that I don't. And
well, let's move on to a film that we could probably both agree on.
yes. So that was my hot take. In case you're wondering,
That
'Cause
was the hot take.
we're kind of changing the format up here. We're kind of just discussing things, but
But we're talking about some hot takes.
So
Like
we're having some hot
we're
takes.
seeing where we agree and we're seeing
I
where
guess
we
I should
don't.
preface when I have a hot take alert. That's what we need to do.
Oh, yeah,
that's
let's
what
do
we
that.
I like that. That's what we're gonna do now. So so whenever one of us says
We should have like a little.
so you know
like
what
a little
we're just
jingle
gonna
that plays.
this is I like this format. I'm just going to explain it on this podcast. Is what we're gonna do from now on. Is we'll discuss things, and when we say something that the other person disagrees with, we call out hot take.
And we can play
Or
like,
if they say something, so you just say hot take, and then we find out who has the hotter take.
we could like have like a little chime go in the background or something like to alert like
You can
hot
add that in.
take, What?
Okay.
Yeah, this is cringy. Yeah, why not talk about
But
it
I
on
like
this
that.
podcast?
I like
you know?
that.
Yeah.
That's how we're gonna
Well,
format this. From
after
now
we
on,
have now
so.
moved on from our hot take alert, we are now moving
yeah.
back into the film discussion to talk about Goblet.
Goblet of Fire.
The true turning point of the franchise.
Yes. Now, I think the turning point works here because even in the overarching story, it's the turning point.
it is the turning
Like,
point.
so it works to have
Yeah.
the darker tonal shift.
The
here.
climax of this one is the climax, I feel, of the well, or maybe not climax, but I don't know. It is the big like going over the hump in the storyline of this entire franchise.
Yeah.
The moment that Voldemort is back.
Yes. Yeah, so it's a big tonal shift. The scene of Voldemort returning is
The last
amazing.
15 minutes of that film. Like from the
Stellar.
moment that Cedric
The moment
and
they
Harry-
grab the cup, really.
From the cup to the end of the film
Is
absolute
stellar.
perfection.
It is stellar because it hits you so hard. Because
Dude, hearing Cedric's dad just
I know
wailing
that part gets me
every
time.
time.
Every
My
time.
boy.
Like a lot of times, for me, a lot of times I'm just kind of like there'll be one of those scenes and it's just not quite powerful enough. So you're just like, oh, that good acting. I don't know. It's kind of like, can you stop now? It's kind of annoying, honestly. But in that scene, like, just the snap of Cedric's there, Cedric's not. it's just so jarring.
Well, also,
and it
like,
just sticks with
when
you
they
that whole
come back,
scene.
Harry is like,
That's
you
what I
think-
mean.
You think everything that just happened, they're like still playing the band.
I know,
and
that's the
everything,
thing
and,
is,
like,
first you have the jarring bit where Cedric's there, boom, Voldemort kills him. He's gone. There's nothing you can do. There was nothing you could done. It's done. And you're just like, wait, oh my goodness. How is Harry going to stop this guy? Like, actually, it wasn't Voldemort. It was, Pettigrew? But
well, yeah.
it's just like, he's gone.
But no, yeah. If you
Oh my
think about
goodness.
it-
And so then you have
Yeah.
that tension carries through the scene, right? And finally Harry escapes and you're like, okay, it's over. And then you're like, hang on, that just happened. Harry's just like, that just happened. And everyone else has no idea that anything happened. And so
all they know is
that
Harry
you
came
have
back
to
with a dead
experience that
Cedric.
shock,
Yeah.
that sudden shock of realizing what happens twice. And it's amazing.
It is a really, I think they did, like, no offense to, like, Robert Pattinson. I feel like he's had some really good highs. Like, he's a much better actor than I think people give him credit for.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I know he did Twilight, and but I'm really excited for, like, for example, the Batman that's coming up with him in it. And I really liked him in Goblet. Like, he served, I felt, exactly the role that he needed to.
Yeah,
And the good part
he
is
nailed that.
how later on he is more of a symbol of, like, they remember Cedric for
Yeah.
who he was. You know, he was... And I like how they remember. I like how that sticks with Harry.
I like that they even gave him development. He's not this flat goody two shoes. Like they kind of show even with the badges and stuff that he's not the greatest guy, but he tries to be, and that's what I really
recognizes
love.
it when he's in the wrong.
He kind of felt bad about the badges, but he still went along with it until Harry was around, and so part of you is like, I don't really like Cedric, but you realize like. I mean, he's just like anyone. He's just trying to do the best he can with what he's got.
Yeah,
and so it makes him
teenager,
relatable.
Yeah.
It makes him, so then that makes the whole end bit so much more powerful because it's not just like, oh, this one random kid died. Oh, this great
how
dude
they set
died.
up the beginning of the
like
film
you're
too,
like,
with,
oh,
like,
somebody that could have been my friend
yeah.
died. Like you can even relate to Harry in the fact that he's kind of a friend.
Well, they set up the beginning of the film really well with going to the Quidditch match and meeting up with Cedric and his dad.
Yeah, that
and
too.
like they set that up really well.
Establishing that relationship early, also like all of that stuff throughout the film. They're setting up bits that culminate in that end scene, and that's what I really like. I feel like that kind of plays into things that I don't like about Prisoner of Azkaban. Is I feel like there's just things for the sake of being consistent with the books, but it doesn't follow those threads to the conclusion.
That's fair.
Whereas this movie picks the details
Goblet of
that
Fire
build
is
to
a
that.
really
It
very
picks the moments that
well-written
build
film.
to the conclusion.
Yeah.
And doesn't worry about necessarily all the nitty gritty details in between.
Yeah, the one
And that's why
the
that's
one thing
that's
really good
about
about
that
Goblet
film.
is it pretty much rips away everything from the school aspect.
Right, because
Like,
it doesn't need to be
There's
there.
no more like worrying about like seasons or anything like that. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
literally the only thing we care about here is the tournament. That's
Right.
the only thing we care about.
And I think that's 100% fair. I
Mm-hmm.
think because it keeps the story focused. There's not all these extra details, and you're like, oh, I wonder where that's going. But it gives you what you need for the climax. And I feel like that's just clean storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
The effects are phenomenal. Again, production design, all of that, like all around.
Oh yeah, everything.
There's
It's
great stuff in
really
there.
good. I also like some of the subplots that are going on, like Ron and Harry, and like the tension in their friendship a
and
little
the Yule
bit.
Ball, like with
The Yule Ball,
Hermione.
Hermione and Ron.
Yeah, that scene's good because that's the thing is every element. I really like how, just as it should be, each element is adding to the story, either developing character or adding to the plot, or doing both at the same time and mixing the two.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like as Prisoner of Azkaban, that's not really always the case. There's things that are supposed to be character development, but they sort of conflict with other character development aspects, and it doesn't quite weave together the way Goblet does. Goblet is just, it's clean, weaves through. You can relate to the characters. I do find the bit with Ron getting jealous of Harry. I think that's the most annoying part to me.
It is, but even
That
then,
I
it's
think that's my
not-
biggest
yeah.
qualm with the film. It's not like it doesn't break the film. It's not like a
No.
terrible thing, but it's just the rest of the film is so good that part I don't really like. But again, that has to do with them
But also
keeping.
they're
That has to do with the
kids.
books, and it makes sense, and it doesn't drag on very
No,
long.
they cut it out, like halfway through the film. Like
yeah,
they-
so it's just a small bit. So it's really, it doesn't break it, and it's altogether fine.
And it kind of makes a little bit of sense that like Ron is also recognizing slightly fourth wall break that he is the like side. He is just the sidekick to Harry.
Right.
In the overarching narrative.
Yeah.
So moving on now past the turning point, a very interesting film is Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah.
So obviously it has the probably the worst, and when I say worst, I actually mean best. I just mean best worst villain ever created. Period. Dolores Umbridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's an interesting film. It's a different film.
Mm-hmm. It goes a different direction, but I do like the direction it goes because it starts to build towards
It's getting closer
tonal of the end, where it's less so about what are they going to do about the school, and more so what are they going to do about the wizarding world. So it's them sort of it sort of has
they're starting to
the
expand
2000s era revolution type vibe.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of feels like that, where it's these young kids stepping up and stepping out and trying to do something even when everyone's trying
Which
to
it's very
stop
interesting to see the Ministry of Magic's handling of the situation of hearing like reports that Voldemort is back.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they're very nervous. They don't want anyone talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like the way that Order starts to expand the world more. Because I feel like that one is where you really start to see. Because I mean, the other films you see the wizarding world, but that one establishes like the Ministry of Magic. That's the most you've seen of it. Is there you see the building, you see how it operates, and that really sets up for later. So I like that. I think Order of the Phoenix. I really like the film. I like the character elements. I think for me, my least favorite part is probably the wizard battle, not between Dumbledore and Voldemort, but the one with all the Death Eaters and the.
Oh, really? Yeah. Though Sirius's death
Order
was pretty good.
Sirius's death is good. It's just the pacing in that scene doesn't work for me.
You know,
the way that it's the same way Cedric's death works really well because it's so jarring and out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Where Sirius, it feels like it's just for the sake of killing him off. In the book, that moment's really good, but it's just I don't know if it just feels like. I don't know if it's too long or too short. I don't know.
I will say some of the ending of Order is not as great as like more the beginning part. Like the beginning part and the middle part of Order are probably the best parts of that movie. The ending's not bad.
Yeah, it does.
The final end battle versus Voldemort and Dumbledore is really cool.
Yeah, when I first watched it, like it's so different from the book because they don't talk at all that it was for me upsetting. But the second time I watched it, I was like, I feel dumb for not enjoying this. This is visually amazing. It's a really powerful moment, and I really like it. Although I will say Daniel Radcliffe's like convulsing never quite works for me.
And what
at the end of the duel when he's got a headache and he's like convulsing on the floor and Dumbledore's trying to help him out.
Yeah.
That part's a little cringy, but
really
for me
that never bothered me too much, but
it's
been
not
a little bit.
That's so minor though. That's just a minor complaint.
It's definitely, I will say, Order is maybe, I don't know, like where would you probably
I
put
just feel like he has
films?
to pee the whole time. I'm like, just go to the bathroom, bro.
I would say it's probably middle tier of the franchise.
Mid-tier film.
It's a really good film. I would say though the middle part where like Dolores is the head of the school and she's putting in all the rules and like especially like the punishment of the scarring on your hand. Like I thought that was handled really well.
Yeah, they definitely have the tone right for Umbridge.
Like it's hard to watch a bit, like because you're thinking like this person is evil. Like they are like torturing children. Like it is, but I do also like in that aspect when Fred and George come in on brooms and like completely just wreck the place.
Yeah, that scene's amazing. The scene where she's like starting to crack down when she becomes the headmaster. That scene's good too. With the montage bit.
What about that one the prophecy teacher when she like tries to fire her?
Oh yeah,
and McGonagall steps up.
I think that might be one of the strongest scenes. In the film, honestly.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that before we moved on because I just remembered I was like that's a really good scene.
Yeah, it's really strong because at this point we haven't really seen the teachers do anything where it's like we've never seen the teachers have a struggle, and that sort of takes I feel like that moment is the most humanizing of the teachers we've seen.
But that also shows how much
what I mean?
Dumbledore means to everyone.
Right. How much Dumbledore means, but how much the teachers mean to each other. Like at that point, the only thing we've seen is that like Snape's kind of like we kind of get the character of the professors. We get that they work together, but you don't really see that they care about each other until that moment.
much.
Yeah, that moment really shows the humanity of the teachers, and it really makes them more relatable, as opposed to seeing them at like, you're not just relating to them as the fact that they're like a teacher you had. At this point, they're like, that could be you. You know.
It's handled really well. It's a pretty good film. Now, getting more toward the end of the franchise here, we have the predecessor to the big conclusion. We have Half-Blood. I don't know how I feel about Half-Blood.
Half-Blood, I feel like it's good, but also forgettable. I always forget that it exists. I can never remember what happens in
except the end. The end is like the sole reason.
Yeah.
Because that is the moment, you know, when Snape kills Dumbledore.
Yeah. That moment.
And like Harry confronts Snape, and like that's handled really well, I thought.
That scene's good.
But yeah, I don't think agree with you. It is very forgettable.
As far as conclusion scenes in the Harry Potter franchise, it's not the strongest. I think that the graveyard scene in Goblet is
so
way
much stronger. Yeah.
Obviously. But
it's
definitely a good scene. The tension with Draco is good because that sort of
Draco's being the most tested if he's going to be
right. Well, that's the most interesting scene
role.
we've seen with Draco. Is up to this point, Draco has been pretty much a flat bad guy.
Well, also,
and that is the first time we've seen that he actually does have an inner conflict. Like,
well, also you kind of see that a little bit too with like Harry reading the book that's by the Half-Blood Prince,
right?
And like getting darker, like the confrontation in the bathroom with him and Draco.
Yeah, Draco. This is I think it's definitely the strongest movie for Draco.
It is definitely like when he's talking with his like friends on the train and like
right. Because I mean, the whole time, like up to this point, Draco's just been Draco. This is but this whole film.
This is the moment
Draco
that they're
has
starting
tension
to suspect
this entire
whether he's a
film.
Death Eater or not.
Right,
this is
but
really...
but I mean, you have that, but you also have Draco's inner tension because he wants to be a Death Eater, but only because his parents want it.
Yeah.
He wants to make his parents happy, and to do that, he thinks he needs to be a Death Eater.
Yeah.
And so you have this struggle of he doesn't really want to be like a dark wizard. That's not really what he wants.
But he definitely
feels like he has to.
He wants to make his parents proud.
Right. And so it's really interesting because it kind of reflects back on his character this whole time. You're like, well, maybe he actually was. I mean, maybe he actually has been struggling this whole time. Like he kind of feels bad and stuff. Like again, same thing I was saying about Order of the Phoenix. It starts to humanize these characters even more, which is really cool. That these characters that you've been seeing this whole time, like you get, like each movie makes more and more characters relatable in that way, to where you can sort of see that struggle that they're having.
Also not just like Draco with his inner conflict, but you also get to see a lot more of Snape.
Yeah.
Which I think was handled really well.
Right.
Like, especially when he has to do the basically agreeing that if Draco can't kill him, he will. And
well,
before,
to be fair, that's happens in the next film.
I know why, but it's so well for like again, like if you're a newcomer to the franchise, you're like, what is going on with Snape?
Yeah, with the inclusion of the last two films, they make Half-Blood Prince so much stronger. Just because they delve into it.
This franchise is done a lot better if you binge watch it all at once.
Right, yeah. Definitely is better if you go through it all as opposed to taking one film as standalone, because there's so much each film adds to the previous films. So it's definitely worth not just one but two watch throughs, once to get the story and all the elements, and two to see how things point forward and point back. Is really cool with this franchise. I mean with any franchise, but Harry Potter does it really well. Just weaving themes and characters and stories together to tell a really good story.
Yeah, I agree with you. So now for the conclusion though, outside of that, we have Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, parts 1 and 2.
Now,
I think we just talk about them together.
Let's talk about them together.
But
I think that's fair.
personally not a fan of the 2-part finale. I would rather I'd rather have a 3.5 hour movie than two 2-hour movies.
Well, then just take it together as it is.
I know.
View it as one.
I don't like that. I feel like it sort of hampers the creativity there, because you have to find a division point. You have to find a midpoint at which you can split the story into two.
Which they found a decent with like Voldemort finding the Elder Wand.
Yeah,
like getting the Elder Wand finally.
I don't like that. I feel like
I definitely think the overall conclusion. I think definitely we have to say the strongest point of Deathly Hallows by far is Snape.
Yes, the scene with Snape. That's part 2. I mean, I feel like this is the case in any split. Finale.
Part 2.
The part 2 is
Lord
is
of the
the
Rings,
best.
Return of the King versus Two Towers. I'm
Yeah.
not saying
Well,
Two Towers. I know, but one is
different
better.
scenario, but
one
yeah.
is better than the other.
Yeah,
being
the finale,
yes.
always.
Usually, people want to
Yes.
see the grand battle, the culmination. You know,
Right, but I mean, like, even the smaller story elements. The first one just sort of introduces things. It introduces what the Deathly Hallows are.
it does some.
It does have the
things.
moment with Dobby. That is in the
Yeah.
first one.
Oh.
That movie, that part. I think really for the first one, the main thing is the Ministry of Magic scene. That's this movie. That's part one, isn't it?
Which part with
When they
where
when they break in
that's,
and they
that's part one.
polyjuice. I always forget about that scene. I really like that scene and the bank scene.
Yes,
Those
those are pretty good.
Those two scenes I really like those.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like the
one's
stuff
a
in the
very
woods,
weird,
the stuff in the
weird
woods where
situation.
they're like hiding out and Ron gets mad at them and everything.
I'm honestly really okay with that.
I don't like it. I don't like
Really?
it. Yeah.
Okay.
I get
it's not my favorite, but
it's
I'm
mainly
okay
because
with it.
like I didn't like it in Goblet of Fire, but it's not too long, and I feel like the pacing with this movie, it ends up being long to the point where Ron leaves and then you almost kind of forget that he left. You're just kind of like, okay, and then he shows up again. And you're like, oh, that's right, Ron was gonna.
Well, honestly, all along, I kind of wanted Hermione and Harry to be more of a thing. Like, I didn't read the books, and
Yeah.
like it. I know that they weren't gonna do that, but it was exploring the idea of that a little bit.
Right. I mean, Ron and Hermione were kind of set up from the beginning,
They were.
but
But from an outsider coming into the franchise, that was something that I had an interesting point of view. Is like, I understand that, but like,
yeah,
if you look at like Harry and his love life, it's kind of hilarious. Like, they slightly set up Ginny as a love interest in the second film. Slightly, they introduce
Yeah.
her character,
Yeah.
and that she has like a little kid
slightly
crush
in
on
the
him.
first book, but she's not in the
Yeah.
first movie.
But
so-
like
or
then
is
all of a
she?
sudden
No, she's in
like
the first
but
movie.
then all of a sudden like in Half Blood, you know, all of a sudden he's like, oh, Ginny all of a sudden, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, he takes an interest in like who she's dating and like
Right.
which it makes sense. It was an interesting thing at least to look at. But I will say, like, overall, Deathly Hallows, while not the strongest of the Harry Potter franchise, still was, at least for me, a satisfying conclusion. Especially seeing the ending scene where Harry Potter is, you know, shipping off his kids to Hogwarts.
Yeah.
And he explains to him like why his kid is named why he is.
Right.
You know, your name is the combination of two headmasters of Hogwarts, and you're just thinking like all of the weight behind that statement.
Yeah. Two of the greatest headmasters.
Two of the greatest headmasters that Hogwarts ever had. So I mean, overall, like me and you both agree. Like, I mean, I know you have some of your problems with Prisoner, but in general, like the franchise was handled really well.
Yeah. I think overall it's consistently good and enjoyable. Yeah, I personally don't like Prisoner of Azkaban, just because the reasons I mentioned. But the rest of the franchise, great. 10 out of 10 would recommend.
Well,
you probably all have watched it, so that's good.
There's still a decent amount of people on campus I don't think that have.
Really?
Well, I think a lot of people.
Well,
not to like get too much into like, you know, parenting decisions or politics, but I have found that there's been still a decent amount of people that because their parents felt because there's magic in it, that's not really okay for them to watch.
Yeah, which is understandable.
Yeah,
I think that the Christian themes, aside from later statements by J.K. Rowling, originally,
yeah, I was gonna say
the Christian themes throughout, I think, are strong enough to weigh out moral.
I don't
quandaries with
honestly.
magic.
I
That's
don't
my
trust
opinion.
anything that J.K. says
At this
all.
point, not anymore.
No.
Yeah,
Not a
but
bit.
yeah, it's kind of a bummer about that. But I mean,
Yeah.
there's definitely Christian themes woven throughout. Overall, like the themes throughout the book, I think are really good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's.
No.
I think it's a good message throughout.
Now, I do think we have been going on for a pretty lengthy time. So before we wrap up, we gotta, as per tradition, we gotta talk real quick about something we watched this week. Maybe just a real, you know, just some for you guys to go check out on your own.
I watched quite a bit this week. So
Really, so the only things I could really think of that I watched was I watched Interstellar earlier this week. Just phenomenal movie, like absolutely amazing. Maybe one of the most beautiful films I've seen.
Yeah.
When it comes to space.
Yes. Yeah. I
That one's
mean,
pretty good.
they went above and beyond to make that movie look the way that it should. I mean, scientific research was done just to simulate that black hole.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was an entire scientific study done and mathematical equations made to
Yeah.
accurately show a black hole is unbelievable.
Christopher Nolan created a really good film.
Yeah.
It's a really solid film. And another film, completely different end of the spectrum in terms of a type of a movie, was Emperor's New Groove. 100% everyone needs to watch it. Find someone
You
who has
need
Disney
to.
Plus, or if you have Disney Plus, watch the film. It's only like an hour and 15 minutes long. It's
It's
not
really that short?
It's that
I
short.
thought it was 90 minutes.
No, it's not
It's
even.
not even 90?
Not even 90.
Oh, man.
But it is a
the
great
pacing
movie.
in that movie is phenomenal.
It is such a great movie. Yes,
I love
very
it.
much. It is one of Disney's best in terms of comedies.
Oh, for sure.
Now, outside of that, the last thing that I watched this week, and I just started watching this with Nathan. He had not seen it before. We started watching it last night. It's not a movie; it's a show. But VGHS.
Oh, I love that show.
I've been wanting to get at least some
Search
guys
it up
in my
on
hall.
YouTube. Search it
Video
up on
Game
YouTube.
High School on YouTube. There are 3 seasons. They're all free on YouTube. Watch it. It's amazing. It's a world
Yes.
where basically the biggest sport imaginable is esports.
Oh,
And this
man.
kid gets a chance to go to like this prestigious video game high school, and it is everything about that is so great. Like it still holds
Yeah,
up
Video
really
Game
well.
High School.
You know, in a
for
year,
searching.
you know, next summer it turns 10.
No.
Yeah,
First season or the whole thing?
first season.
Okay, I was
turns
like,
10.
Still though. Oh
That's
my
still
goodness.
yeah,
Yeah, because I didn't actually start watching until season 3 was coming out.
really.
Because I had started watching that channel, Rocket Jump. I started
Yeah.
watching them.
I
And then I
started-
saw their banner was VGHS is coming out. And I was like, what is VGHS?
Mhm.
And I asked one of my friends, I'm like, you haven't watched that? I was like, no. They're like,
Oh,
you need to
the
right
amount
now.
of quotable
Oh my
lines
goodness.
in that
It is
so.
it is so funny. It is it's so refreshing because these guys are like it's this independent studio that is, as far as in my opinion, like untouched by some of the restrictions of Hollywood, to the point where they just made a passion
Well, again,
project.
think about
passion
think
project.
about when this was made. This was made in this was made YouTube 2012 to what 2014.
And by the way,
2015?
it was made for YouTube, but it is TV show quality. It is
Season 1 not as
Season one, not as much.
Season 1 is more like
by
a movie.
by season 3.
Oh, it is
steps
straight up a
up.
show.
But I mean the
Can we
quality
just
of the
say like
production
I don't
is
want to talk
amazing.
about anything spoilers, but like man, the villains,
Oh, they're so good.
every one of them, Law, Shane Pizza, like people are probably so confused. You need to watch this show.
Yeah.
New Law,
New Law,
not
Law.
Law.
Man.
It's great.
It's a great show.
Check it out.
10
Check
out
it
of
out.
10.
So, was
Please
there
watch it.
anything
Please
notable
watch
that
it.
you watched this week that you want to end with?
I would highly recommend the film Snowpiercer if you haven't seen it.
Now I think that's on Netflix.
It is on Netflix.
and that's Chris Evans.
Chris Evans, yeah.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend it. It's sort of a post-apocalyptic film.
I've seen like the ads for the new show.
Okay,
So I was,
yeah. I'm not.
So
I don't know about the new show.
it seems to be. It's a lot of the
It's-
same.
Yeah, it's a tie-in. I don't know if it's a reboot or
I think it's a reboot.
prequel or a sequel. I think it's a reboot.
I think it's a
as
reboot.
Same as you. But the film is really strong. I highly recommend it. Just for context on what it is. Basically, you have, it's like mid 2000s, and there
Well,
is
mid 20th century, you mean?
no mid like 2000 to 2010, like the,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Wait.
or
that'll
maybe like 2010s.
I was gonna say because the film
happens
came out in
before-
2012.
Well, yeah, but it takes place later than it. The start of the plot.
Oh,
happens
okay,
here.
okay.
So
okay, I
it's
was gonna say.
yeah, I'm setting the stage for the film.
Okay,
It's
I
like
see.
it's like mid 2000s, and maybe later 2000s, and there's the global warming crisis. So the government decides that what to solve the problem, they found this chemical that they can disperse into the atmosphere to bring it down a few degrees. That doesn't work. Instead of a few degrees, it's a few hundred degrees, and it is deadly to stay outside. And the Earth is put into a global ice age to shearing conditions that just end life on the planet. However, one man who had a train company created a train that that goes around a track that takes 365 days to go around the whole track. It is like a cruise train, so it's got all kinds of fancy cars and stuff, and it is impervious to weather conditions. It is completely weather sealed, impossible to destroy. It's super tough. It's not impossible to destroy, but it is very tough
Mm-hmm.
because it's made to go through any climate, any conditions to handle that. So all of these people load up on this train, and so the film takes place 17 years later, and it shows the plight of the people that didn't have tickets, the descendants of those people, trying to take over the train and trying to have the good life that the descendants and still living ticket holders have. So it's this revolution of lower class trying to take over the upper class, but in the setting of a train. It's really cool the way that the story and the themes and everything just flow really well together, because you have sort of this linear progression of thematically lower class to upper class, visually back of train to front of train. So it's really well done.
It definitely sounds interesting.
It's very
I'll definitely
interesting.
have to check it out.
I mean, I love the film. I mean, it's not a perfect film. I would say some people may not like the ending. I love the ending.
All right.
So heads up on that.
I'll definitely have to
definitely
check it
worth
out.
checking out.
So there's you got some recommendations, people, for different streaming services. You know,
Netflix.
some
Disney
that
Plus.
we stated you could definitely watch. VGHS and maybe
VGHS
others.
is free for everyone.
Really go check out VGHS. Even season 1 is only like 2 hours long.
Not even.
No, it's 2 hours.
Is it 2 hours?
Yeah, I checked.
It's 9 20-minute episodes, right?
No, they vary in length. Some are like 10
Well,
minutes, and some of them, yeah,
I'm rounding
it's
because
so.
some of them are 30, some of them are 10, so it's about 20 minutes each.
No, there was no 30.
There's no 30-minute ones.
No,
They're all like 10 to
20.
20. Okay,
Yeah. Anyway,
you're right.
so
you're right.
we've held you guys way too long. Hopefully, you enjoyed our discussion and some hot takes.
Yeah.
Our hot take alert.
Yeah,
on,
so
on
that's going to be
Prisoner.
the new format. So hopefully,
Yeah, because
hopefully
we're trying to like have it at least more of an interesting conversation in there, and so we're
Yeah.
trying to make it a little bit more on the film
'cause
discussion side.
we don't have the hottest of takes.
but we have
We have some
certain
hot takes.
opinions.
We have some
about,
strong
yeah.
opinions that can be hot takes. So I think this is
So-
the best way to kind of work
So,
those out.
hopefully you guys enjoyed this longer video, evens out the last one. And if you have any suggestions for what you want us to talk about, leave it down in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube. I will state that not the week that the last episode comes out, but the week after the last episode of WandaVision comes out. So that is, I think, 3 weeks from now, probably. I think so.
2 or 3, yeah.
Well, not when
Yeah,
the next
three,
episode. Yeah, 3 weeks from now, we will be doing, we will be taking a slight break from our normal what we do to talk about WandaVision.
Yes. If you're
so-
not watching WandaVision, you're doing something wrong. You need to be watching.
And we will
the
give
show.
you a week. We
If
will
you
give you
have
a
not
week to
seen
watch it.
any of the Marvel films, if you have seen all of the Marvel films,
You don't
I
need
would
to watch
still
it.
recommend
Yeah,
them.
you don't need to.
It adds
It's
to
not
the
needed.
films that already exist, and it's just enjoyable on its own.
Vision is the greatest character.
Definitely recommend it.
Vision is the greatest character. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that's a good way to leave them. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. We will see you here next time on Hot Takes with Derek and Jason.
Goodbye.